Good evening to TTT's viewing and listening audience. We are also live via Talk City 91.1 FM and the following Facebook pages: TTT Live Online, Gender and Child Affairs Division, and CWHE TNT. I am your host and moderator, Wendy Lewis, Chair and District Manager of Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, the Trinidad and Tobago chapter. The aim of this evening's panel discussion is to educate and edify the citizenry on matters of mutual interest. This evening's theme, The Village That Once Raised the Child, discussing a roadmap to protecting our nation's children, men and women. The discussion will be moderated in 3 segments. The first segment is subtitled The Journey Continues. We will be speaking with the head of the Hunters Search and Rescue Team, Captain Valence Rambarat, and the head of the Special Victims Department, which incorporates the Child Protection Unit, the Gender-Based Violence Unit, and the Sexual Offences Unit, Superintendent Claire Guy-Alleyne. Let's start with Mr. Rambarat. Mr. Rambarat, good evening and welcome.
Good evening and pleasant. It is nice to be here, and a pleasant good night as well to our guest, Superintendent Claire Guy. And it's a pleasure to be on your program to discuss. I believe your choice of theme is appropriate.
Thank you.
The way Hunters Search and Rescue Team engage communities and families, we feel strongly that the village that once raised a child is an appropriate theme and is relevant, and children's issues must be placed on the front burner at all times. I'm a former educator. I've dealt with children all my life, and I think there's some pressure in the society, and we need to look at that and really protect our children.
Thank you so much. When was the Hunters Search and Rescue Team founded?
It was founded on the 2nd of February 2021, and it wasn't formed by us sitting down and saying, let's form a Hunters Search and Rescue Team. It was circumstantial. I requested the police of the TTPS whether in fact we could have joined the Andrea Barrett search, and they said yes. I got a call from DCP Joanne Archie on the 9th of the 1st of February, and she says, come on, join in the search, and that's how it started. And subsequent to that, those who were involved in the search agreed that we should continue this. At first I was skeptical. I hadn't planned this to be part of my life. They appointed me leader, not only leader, but captain. And that's how I got that name. And they said, listen, we want you to lead us in this effort. And it evolved into a well-structured search and rescue team, and it's serving Trinidad and Tobago.
What is the vision of the rescue team?
The vision is closure matters. And the mission is to work with law enforcement, like Superintendent Claire Guy and the entire TTPS and other arms of the Defense Force, to assist families when their loved ones go missing. And we understand that as a traumatic period for families, and
Indeed.
we want to assist. We've learned how to search, and we've learned how to reunite the younger children with their parents when they go missing. And to me, that is really where our expertise lies. People feel that we go out in the bushes and search, and that's all we do. No. Just over the weekend and today, it was 6 in the last 3 days, where we were able to reunite 6 missing female teenagers with their families, very quietly.
Is it a registered NGO?
It is in process of being registered. We are almost there in terms of registration.
And do you work independently with your searches, or do you get the information from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
The information, and I think this is where people are saying we should replace or we're better than the TTPS, and that is not true. The TTPS is a well-established, well-organized service organization.
Indeed.
And we've found a niche, and the niche we found was simply that the police has drones, they have dogs, they have helicopters, they have everything else. But that little area of going into the bushes and searching and transferring our hunting skills to searching, that I think is where we have found a niche for ourselves. And then the second area of our expertise is locating missing persons, wildlife. And what we've done is that we have a system, and I call it ease of communication. people see the TTPS as a bureaucratic organization. You have to get to the police station. When you make a call, it may be delayed. There may be problems there. They just drop us a note on Facebook. We respond. If they don't have a vehicle, we provide a vehicle, and we get to their homes. We pick them up, and most of the times the information lies within the families, and we question them, and they open in terms of their responses, and we're able to take them to the home where the person is located and say, well, look, here's your daughter, here's a son, here's an elderly person, and
so persons contact you via Facebook only?
And we have numbers there, and they're able to WhatsApp and call us, right? And so normally the messages would be through our Facebook Messenger, and I believe it's the ease of communication. It's not a problem with the TTPS per se, but I think that ease of communication of staying in your home or in your vehicle or at your office and being able to communicate your problem to somebody, I think that is what has catered. That is what is accounts for our success rate in terms of finding people.
As captain, is it your responsibility to provide the strategic direction for the team, or are there different team leaders, for example, situated geographically across Trinidad?
Yeah, we're 25, and we have 2 recruits who are in training with us to come on board. We fully represented all over Trinidad and Tobago
as well?
And I think, Minister, if she's listening, we have 3 members in Tobago. We have a North team, a Central team, and a South team. So members are trained, and they can respond quickly in any geographical location in Trinidad and Tobago. However, when they are on the field, the captain gives them the direction, and they are on the phone with me at all times if captain cannot go, and I will give them directions. A risk assessment is needed for every situation, and in reuniting some persons with their families, you have to assess the situation. You would have heard we went into a shack in San Fernando and then one in Tamana over the last 2 weeks to retrieve young girls. And I had assessed that there was no risk involved, really, and we sent 2 guys in quietly to the shack. We got the girl and reunited her with her parents.
Where does that experience stem from?
The experience stems from me dealing with children and families. Remember, I'm a retired educator, so I understand families. I understand the psychosocial environment in which we operate. I understand the socioeconomic background of families. And generally, these are problems affecting families, and I embrace a diplomatic, non-confrontational approach to resolving situations, and I think that has been working.
A lot of resources would go into your team.
No.
No resources needed?
It's self-funded.
Self-funded?
Yeah, we self-funded. And what we do is that members put their own gas in their vehicles and they contribute to their own expenditure. When we're out on searches, we put up our funds and purchase meals, and we get by on very little. And I've taught them that, when you're in service, you make a little, count a lot, and we get a lot done. We've not gone publicly out for funds, and we did get a couple of sponsors for our jerseys and search kits, probably 2 or 3, and that has been it. And we've been enjoying what we've been doing, and funding is not an issue to us. And sometimes I say to the guys, the day we get stuff, the whole manner in which we operate will change. So it's better we get by on little and we focus on our goals, and we keep up the good work.
Understood. We had a very sensitive week, Captain Rambarat.
Yeah.
If I may say so, last week. And one of the highlights of last week is an ongoing police matter. It's very sensitive, and you may be aware that a second autopsy was done yesterday. And because it's an ongoing matter, whether it's alleged or factual, we have to shy away from some of those questions or even discussing the matter because it's ongoing. However, your team was able, you were sharing earlier, your team was able to unite. I think it was 6.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
The team got a call for a missing person in Point Fortin, a 2-year-old boy, and
exempt that situation.
Oh, which one?
The six
girls that we
you
did?
were referring to.
Yeah, well, the TTPS posted 3 girls missing on Sunday, and we had a plan to also go and complete work on another 3 that started about during the week.
Okay.
And so while we were in the field, I was feeding the team the information on 3 new persons. All right, and we were able, because we have a network with the TTPS, we have a network with the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, the prison service.
Okay.
One of the gentlemen who were posted missing, we got information from our Facebook page that the person was incarcerated. And so immediately we placed a call to the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service. We got confirmation that he was incarcerated, and we were able to call the TTPS and the family and say, listen, your loved one is currently in custody, and therefore you should act on it and make sure you visit or find out more about that. The second one was a similar case, but at different location. The TTPS had posted a missing person, and we visited the home, and somebody from Facebook, again, from our messenger system, provided information. A medical social worker at Mount Hope provided information that this missing lady is currently at Mount Hope. She's warded. And so we got verification because the medical social worker called us, and so we were able to, again, notify the TTPS and the family. The other 3 were teenage girls.
Right.
And we visited the home. We obtained CCTV footage within a couple of minutes. We saw the car in which she went. We knew the guys. The family knew the fellas who she was with, the guys. And we found out that they were in Cora. TTPS was notified in Tanapuna, and they went to search for the girl. She panicked. She jumped into another vehicle with strangers who she didn't know, and she got herself into a difficult situation, which, in her words, she docked the persons at KFC in Madras Junction, and she called. She called and said, look, listen, I'm here, I'm in trouble. Could you please come first? Luckily, our vehicle was 2 minutes away because we were on that case, and we picked her up at Madras Junction and returned her to her family. And so in every situation, there's a common thread with these runaway girls, and there's only 2. I want to share some statistics with you tonight. Sure. We've received 122 reports of missing persons, and I think Minister could listen in to this. 122 reports of missing persons. Of the 122 persons, 85 has been found. That represents 70%, and you have the rest, 30%, not found. But what is startling to us as an organization is out of the 122 cases, 52 are teenage girls, 52. And that represents 43% of the missing population that we've gathered information on. And to me, that is startling. That's the young people, children. They classified as children under the law. And to me, that's worrisome. And to me, if we have to address issues within families and how it's spilling and affecting the society, I think we got to look at that carefully, because to me that accounts for a lot of our time. It's not searching in bushes and recovering bodies and recovering drowned bodies, but the time we spend with families trying to reunite these loved ones with their families. And to me, that is the concern. Whether these girls should be in homes, whether enough attention is being paid to them, whether the parents understand how to cope with the situation, whether there is need for more work to be done with parents. These are all societal issues that are there and must be dealt with. And that's why I'm happy to be here today and to contribute to, if only to help push these issues onto the front burner so they could get some attention. I'm saying this because I'm not saying it's the government or the police service that has to resolve the problem. The problem really lies within the families. They have dysfunctional families. They are families that are broken apart, and because of this existing situation, there's avenues for persons to seek love elsewhere, to seek attention elsewhere, and we have to get back and examine these issues and see how really it could be resolved. It wouldn't be resolved overnight, but at least an effort has to be focused in that direction.
Understood. Let's invite the head of the Special Victims Department, Superintendent Guy-Alleyne, with a huge responsibility for the Child Protection Unit, the Gender-Based Violence Unit, and the Sexual Offences Unit. Superintendent, good evening and welcome.
Good afternoon to you, good afternoon, Mr. Rambarat, and good afternoon to the listening audience.
Superintendent, we've had a very, very interesting 2 weeks, but I want to share something with the viewing and listening public, which is, and I'm going to quote it directly from the Children Act, Chapter 4601, as amended, Section 4. Part 2, Prevention of Cruelty to Children, where a person has responsibility for a child, and the person willfully assaults, ill-treats, neglects, abandons, or exposes the child, or causes or procures the child to be assaulted, ill-treated, neglected, abandoned, or exposed in a manner likely to cause that child suffering or injury to his physical, mental, or emotional health, or an infant under the age of 3 years, dies whilst in bed or any other place with that person, and it is proved that the death was not caused by disease or any other medical cause, and the person was at the material time under the influence of drink, dangerous drugs, or other substances having a similar effect, and this resulted in the death of the child, the person commits the offense of cruelty to a child. A person who commits an offense under subsection 1 is liable, A, on summary conviction to a fine of $5,000 and to imprisonment for 6 years, or B, on conviction on indictment to a fine of $50,000 and to imprisonment for 10 years. Here we are seeing what the Act states as it relates to the offense cruelty to a child as a result of neglect. Superintendent, please give the parents out there some advice.
One advice I would like to give parents is that parents must parent intentionally. Our children are to be nurtured.
Yes.
Our children, we must understand that we have a responsibility, and the laws. We can see that our legislators in Trinidad and Tobago, they love children.
Yes.
Look at how that section is crafted,
Yes.
how it's worded. Responsibility for a child.
Yes.
We must know where our child is at all times, who our children are with. Yes?
Yes.
And a child is classified under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago as anyone who is under the age of 18. And we must care for our children.
Agreed totally. Superintendent, for the benefit of the viewing and listening audience, can you explain the difference between a summary conviction, which is a fine of $5,000, and a conviction of indictment, which carries a fine of $50,000 and 10 years imprisonment?
Yes. Well, when matters are taken before the court by the police, we have summary matters and we have indictable matters. Summary matters are matters, not that we are saying the matters are not serious, but they are less serious. And the ones that are done on indictment are the more serious offenses. So the summary offenses, the magistrate can hear those offenses and she can pronounce on those offenses. The indictable offenses, the judge, that goes to a judge and jury.
Okay.
Now we have some matters that can be hybrid, and when we say hybrid, you can try them summarily or you can try them indictably.
Okay.
So we call them hybrid. Yes, and we have a couple of offenses that are like that.
Can you give us an example of a summary and an indictable offense?
Right. Cruelty to a child, That is one that can be done summarily. And then we have sexual penetration. That's a really serious offense.
Yes.
So that is done on indictment. So that's an indictable offense. Yes?
Okay.
So before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, we have matters that are classified in that region.
And over the past 2 weeks, Superintendent, I have to call it a trend. We've had a trend of children just going missing. What do you think is the root cause behind all these children that are going missing? And
just as Mr. Rambarat would have alluded to, we have to have parents who are parenting their children, and you have to parent well. Children, things are going on at the home, and children are uncomfortable. We need to give children an ear. Communication. We need to listen to our kids. We have to move away from the time when a kid starts to talk. Hush your mouth, shut up. No.
Yes.
A kid wants to speak, you allow that kid to speak, and you listen to that kid.
Someone else will.
The wrong person, the wrong ear. Yes? So we have to parent intentionally, be loving, be there for our children, nurture our children at all times.
How practical is it for both parents who are working, shift system, 4 or 5 children? Is there help outside of the home that you would recommend?
And just as you said, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village. If you see something, you say something, you do something. Don't just see something and do nothing, because it could be detrimental down the road. Yes? So we need to go back to the days when we had the extended family. Too often now, everybody wants to be a young girl and a young boy. Hello, some of us are aging, and we need to know our place.
Know your place,
Know
yes.
your place.
Know your place.
Yes, and assist with the grandchildren. Be there for the grandchildren, uncles, aunts. Let us be there and care for the children. Show the children more love. Be present. Be most present when you are parenting as well. And stop the absent parenting. We have a lot of times you hear persons speak about single parent. It's a phrase that I hate to hear, because one parent cannot make a child. We all know how a baby comes into the world.
Yes.
It takes 2.
Yes.
Right? So let us nurture this child together. Don't leave this one parent. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes you see one parent being a mother, or one parent may be a father.
Yes.
Let us parent our children together so that our children can feel love, and so that nothing is missing in the home. Even if parents are separated for one reason or the other, that should not affect our parenting. Parent intentionally.
Yes, because the focus should be the child or the children.
That's right.
Focus should. On another note, some of these children left their parental homes willingly. And when you find these children, as Mr. Rambarat would have alluded to earlier as well, they are okay. Are there any provisions in the law where a child under 18 can be charged for wasting police time?
Well, wasting police time. If you leave home,
so you decide to go by your boyfriend, and your whole family is just worried, and nobody can find you. Well, and 3 days later, you quite happy where you are.
Yes, and we can't charge that child for that. However, if we interview that child, and that child was in the company of a male adult, and sexual activity took place, and we get a statement from that child, that male adult will be held accountable, and he can be charged. Now, if you are asking if children can be charged for wasteful employment of the police time.
Yes.
Now, if a child makes a report, and the report is, let's say, a false report, or the report is not truthful, and the investigation proves that, a child can be charged.
And what sort of charge are we looking at?
Making a false report, wasteful employment of police.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's just a charge, no imprisonment, just a charge.
Well, a charge, and the magistrate, the court will decide what imprisonment, if any.
Superintendent, what advice would you give to society on a whole, apart from the parents, apart from the guardian and the relatives? I know we've been saying when you see it, report it, but a lot of people are skeptical about making reports. People are skeptical about speaking out for their own safety. What other options are there?
We are in 2022, Wendy, and you know, we have the TTPS has evolved. We are trying our best to make Trinidad and Tobago safe. We are trying our best to make the TTPS a friendly place because according to Mr. Robert Peel, he said that the people are the police and the police are the people. So I'm so happy to hear the good work that Mr. Rambarat, you know, and his team is doing in Trinidad and Tobago. The police cannot do it alone. The government cannot do it alone.
Agreed.
We each have a part to play with respect to the safety of ourselves, our children, and the entire nation.
Awesome.
Yes?
I totally agree. One of the things that was said earlier by Mr. Rambert, and we would have spoken offline about this as well, in terms of the communication with the children and children not communicating effectively with their parents. Do you believe that social media technology has something to do with this? Because children are very focused on their tablets. They spend a lot of time on Netflix. They spend a lot of time on Facebook. When it's not Facebook, it's Instagram. Is it that parents need to be more forceful to encourage and state we need to communicate? We need to put down these items and we need to have a discussion, because there are times children are in homes and they haven't had a conversation with their parents probably for the week. Other than good morning, good evening, food ready.
And you wouldn't believe, persons are in the home and mommy's upstairs, kids are downstairs, and
Yes.
they're texting each other on the phone. Parents
From
need,
upstairs to downstairs.
Yes. In 2022.
In 2022.
But parents, when we are parenting, right, we need to manage our children's screen time. We need to have
Agreed.
rules and regulation. We must have our children understand there's a time and a place for everything. So we must manage our home. We must not have our home operating ad hoc.
Agreed.
Parenting is a serious business, you know, Wendy.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is indeed. Mr. Rambarat, your rescue team is doing an excellent job, and I want to say thank you on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago as well. So your good deeds are not going unnoticed. So I just wanted to say that to you. Superintendent, we are at a junction, particularly with children, because we're staying on children for this segment, and we'll take some questions in a moment. How can you guide children to change their mindset with all this technology in front of us, and they are bent on technology? But we still have to merge the era when it took a village to raise a child. How do you penetrate the mind of children with our 1940s, 50s, 60s, I'm a child of the 70s, by the way, of taking a village to raise a child? How do you bridge the gap?
We have to bridge it, you know.
We have to bridge it.
It's a difficult thing, but we have to bridge it. And the only way we can bridge it is by communicating with our children, not leaving them to be on their own and to be able to... I know some parents, they had a baby, and next thing they know, they're going to a wedding. They did not know what happened between babyhood and marriage.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? So we need to have that conversation with our kids at all times, letting them know what is acceptable behavior, what is unacceptable behavior, and manage our homes.
And one of the things I want to add before we go to the break, parents seem to want to be friends with their children. What are your views? Because you can't be my friend, because there'll be no boundaries and the lines will get crossed.
Yes. Parents must know their parents, and children must understand that that is the parent, and what the parent says goes. You must have a line where you draw when it comes to parenthood.
Let's take a question from our online audience. The question is for Mr. Rambarat. Mr. Rambarat, one of the viewers is asking, how do they get funding to you?
Well, they just go to the page, and we could either call one of the numbers there or drop us a message, and we will respond. And we don't take cash at all until we have our organization properly registered. But we'll accept...
So who are they giving the cash to?
No, we will not accept cash. We'll probably provide them with an invoice, and they pay the supplier and get us stuff. That's how we operate in the
So the money is not coming directly to you all. It's understood. No. We have a question for Superintendent Claire Guy-Alleyne, and the question is, can you tell us what is the main focus behind the Child Protection Unit?
The Child Protection Unit was formed in 2015, and the aim and objective of the Child Protection Unit was to investigate matters involving children, where children were abandoned, neglected, sexually assaulted, physically assaulted. Yes?
Yes.
And we came about because of the Children Act, which you just spoke about.
Yes.
We came about because of that act as well, and the Children Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. So all three things happened around that time. Yes?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mr. Rambabat, your closing comments?
Well, I want to say again that the topic, the theme of the conversation tonight is absolutely spot on. It's relevant. We must refocus on communities and resources within the communities to continue to assist children to be in a better social, to have better social activities for them, so that they could learn a good value system. And even if things are not good in the homes, I think we have to have strong teachers, strong TTPS officers, strong community officers working to help, because there is hope, and we live in hope, and we know that things could turn around, but we need to focus on the children and get them some help. We didn't talk about one aspect that we met out there while we were on our searches, and reuniting families, and that is, we didn't talk about the males out there and concepts like sexual grooming, and we know that
we're coming to that in the second segment.
In the second half.
Yes.
So I hope it's dealt with, and we have a partnership with another Facebook group called Missing Persons TT, and that's a subject of conversation between the two groups continuously, and I don't think that aspect should be neglected in the conversation.
Definitely not. Thank you so much, Mr. Rambarat. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Did you know the amended Domestic Violence Act, Section 19A, now allows for the making of an emergency application to the court for a protection order in circumstances where a court is not sitting or it is not practicable for the applicant to access the court? You matter. Your life matters. Help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-SAVE. That's 800-7283, or the TTPS at 999. This message brought to you by Gender and Child Affairs.
Parenting during a pandemic can be a balancing act. Sometimes when people lose their balance, they can hurt others or hurt themselves. Disciplining your child should also be balanced, not too harsh, yet rational and fair. Discipline should help children learn how to live respectfully with others and how to be accountable and responsible. Here are 6 tips to help you discipline your child in a safe way. 1. Focus on the do's. Tell your child what behavior you expect to see. This can include how to behave at home, as well as at school and online. 2. Keep calm. Good discipline begins with a level mind. Make sure your child is in a safe space first, and that you are calm before you discipline. 3. Let your children know why they are being disciplined, and tell them what they could have done differently. 4. Remove privileges like the use of video games, but not rights. As you discipline, do not deny children their right to food, water, education, play, or engage in a form of discipline that will affect their health. 5. Remember, every child is different. Use methods that are appropriate for each child's development stage, abilities, and learning style. And above all, 6. Model forgiveness. Once your child has followed through with your discipline method, teach them how to forgive others by forgiving them. Show affection, accept their apology, and do not hold it against them.
Together, let's ensure home is a safe environment for learning, laughter, and love. Call 996, 999, or 800-SAVE for help or to report abuse.
Did you know that under the amended Domestic Violence Act, the court can grant an interim order or protection order on the basis of a single act or omission, or where a single threat has been made by the respondent, every life counts. Do your part by contacting the police at 999 or the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-SAVE. That's 800-7283 to get help today. See it, stop it, report it. This message brought to you by Gender and Child Affairs.
Welcome back. For those of you who are now joining us, I am Wendy Lewis, Chair and District Manager of Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, the Trinidad and Tobago chapter. I am also the host and moderator for this evening's panel discussion. Our theme is the village that once raised the child, discussing a roadmap to protecting our nation's children, men and women in Trinidad and Tobago. This second segment is subtitled Traffic Lights on the Road. I would like to thank Head of the Special Victims Department, Superintendent Claire Guy-Alleyne, and Head of the Hunters Search and Rescue Team, Captain Valence Rambarat, for a very informative first segment. Superintendent Claire Guy-Alleyne will be staying with us for the duration of this evening's discussion. And I would like to welcome to the set the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, Minister with the responsibility for Gender and Child Affairs. Welcome, Honorable Minister. Good evening.
Good evening, Wendy. Good evening, Superintendent Claire Guy-Alleyne. Good evening to the viewing and listening audience.
Honorable Minister, it must have been a very heavy week for you and your division.
Definitely, Wendy. But that's part of the job, and we always try to do our best regardless of the circumstances.
I want to read a quote. We have a responsibility to protect children who are in our care. The law has been enacted to protect them from a legal perspective, but we must take our role as parents and or guardians seriously, end quote. Honorable Minister, what I just heard is one of the things that we need to be ready to be parents. It's not a hobby, it's not a fashion statement. It comes with care, commitment, courage, discipline, tenacity, and most importantly, sacrifice. That means you cannot go out every weekend. You cannot do some of the things that you used to do before. You cannot travel as much as you do. There are a lot of things that you should put aside as a parent. And, you now have a life that ought to be embedded in your decision making until they are 18. Because when that seed is planted, once it's fertilized, it will grow. You cannot reverse the planting of a seed. Honorable Minister, can you share some of the learning outcomes of the parental program that is under your ministry, please?
Okay, so Wendy, the parental program is actually under the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, but with all of government approach divisions, ministries work closely together. So we took the parental workshop. The idea is to really enlighten citizens about what it means to be a parent, how you go about being the best parent you can be, how you interact safely, properly, carefully with your children, how you build that stable family relationship so that your children have the best possible outcome. And the good thing, Wendy, is that the program is also backed and supported by a number of different policies. And I'm happy to note that Trinidad and Tobago is leading in one area. We have a national child policy, and that has set a foundation for us to improve the child care and protection system in Trinidad and Tobago, while also allowing an opportunity for us to work closely with families to help to strengthen the family unit so that our children have the best possible outcome. And I keep stressing the best possible outcome because in all our efforts at the government level, and I could safely say for most of the civil society organizations that I've interacted with, as well as our international partners, we always put the best interest of the child at the center of our business.
Thank you so much, Minister. A lot of information is coming out of your division, which I'm seeing on social media, on, radio, television. A lot of information is being disseminated. How are you reaching those in remote areas?
So, Wendy, we would have realized, especially during the pandemic, that we needed to try different strategies to ensure that we reach as many persons as possible. So apart from using the traditional television or social media, one strategy that we would have used, and it's nothing new, it's something that actually would have been existing for years, going back to the old time days, was engaging all local postal agencies or TT Post Service, engaging the postmen, postwomen to be the conduit of information. So we would have partnered strategically with TT Post, delivering hundreds of thousands of pieces of information to households throughout Trinidad and Tobago, particularly those rural communities where most times the internet connection may not be stable or they may not have ready access to information in real time, but getting that information to them through the postal services so that not only adults are informed and empowered, but also children.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Minister. I would like to quote you, Minister, you cannot legislate people into good behavior. That's a choice. You want to elaborate on some of the choices that our parents, our women, our men should be making, particularly in this season?
When it is so important for persons to be responsible. And when I made that statement, it was in reference to persons actually know what is government doing in terms of laws, but we have laws existing. We have policy in place, but the decision to do good and be good, that is a personal decision. And if we want to ensure that we have a better Trinidad and Tobago, not only for adults, but for children, then we must be responsible. We must stand up and own up to our faults. We must do some introspection, some reflection, and see where we are going wrong as individuals, and try at the individual level to be better and create that ripple effect throughout our society so that we would affect the change that we want to see.
Agreed.
Wendy,
totally.
I want to share personal experience as a mother, because I was listening to you before, and you said that a parent cannot be a friend, or you should not be a friend to your children. But I want to bring a balance. You can be a parent, but be a friend that your children can trust to be open and honest with. And I want to go back to my days as a child in my parents' home. My dad was strict. My parents are strict. Even now as an adult, they are still strict. But there are things that I would go to my dad and confide in him because we have that relationship. We are that close. He is my friend. He's my father. He's a disciplinarian, but he's also a trusted friend that I could confide in. And I've tried to build that relationship with my children, especially my girls who are now teenagers, where they feel comfortable that they could come and talk to mommy about anything and everything. Sometimes some of the conversations I would have with them, the dad would just step aside because it would be that deep. We will talk about anything. And if you allow your children to be honest and open with you, not to be too judgmental, but to listen, to understand, hear their voice, hear what is being said and what is not being said, what is trying to be communicated with their words, with their body language. And once you give them that listening ear and try to build that relationship, they will feel comfortable to come to you in times of distress and confide in you so that you could take the necessary action. I want to encourage parents to please, yes, we have to discipline, but we also have to provide that listening ear so that our children could know that they could trust us when they're in trouble to come and get the comfort, get the support, get the guidance, again, so that they will have the best outcome.
Thank you, Minister. And rightfully so, listening is an art. But a lot of times people listen to react as opposed to listening to respond. Honorable Minister, for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, what is the role of the Children's Authority?
So, Wendy, the Children's Authority provides a regulatory role, as well as a monitoring role, as well as a protection role. So through the Children's Authority, that is the agency when that person would usually reach out to when children are in need of care or are in imminent danger. That is also the agency that is responsible for licensing our children's homes and our rehabilitation centers and other institutions that provide residential care for children. The Children's Authority is also that agency whenever a child has been harmed that will be the first responder, and they work closely with the Child Protection Unit. As I've mentioned at the beginning, Wendy, it's an all-of-government approach where various ministries, departments, and agencies work collaboratively in the best interest of the child.
Thank you so much, Honourable Minister. Child neglect accounts for 33.4% of all reports made to the authority. And we would know there are 4 types of neglect: medical, physical, emotional, and educational. Can you expand on neglect?
I think, Wendy, in Trinidad and Tobago, people don't associate neglect with abuse because they think that it's just part of a culture. If you don't ensure your children have enough food, that's fine. If you don't ensure they have enough books, small thing. But neglect is abuse. And the simple thing of Wendy having a child and being in a space with that child and not paying attention to that child and that child being harmed, that is abuse, that is neglect. Wendy, sending your child out into the public domain without preparing your child properly, that is neglect. Because some persons would send the children out without telling them, okay, these are the steps you should take, this is what you're supposed to do, without preparing the children to respond adequately and appropriately in different circumstances. So I want to encourage us as parents to be really intentional with our parenting, to be really focused. We have our children, we have the awesome task and responsibility of raising future generations of Trimbigonians, and we cannot shirk our responsibility. I find it too often persons think they should put their responsibility on other persons. So let the state deal with it, let the teachers deal with it, let the police deal with it. But we brought these children into the world. It is our responsibility first and foremost to ensure their care and the protection. And I just want to encourage parents to remember that no child asked to be here. We brought them here.
Yes, totally agree. Child abuse is definitely rampant. It is here, Superintendent, as well. As a parent and or guardian, managing your emotions is important. We keep repeating it takes a village to raise a child. That's the mantra. And I would have spoken to Superintendent earlier in terms of bridging the gap. Honourable Minister, how do you suggest we really bridge this gap? Because a lot of people still believe in corporal punishment as well. What are your views?
And when it goes back to basic rights, basic human rights, and understanding, appreciating that we all have rights. Children have rights that must be respected, protected, and promoted. We are signatory to the Convention on the Rights of a Child. And in informing the public about this, we would have trained our children about their rights and their responsibilities. But when it is critical that we go back to the days when we look out for each other to ensure that our children, I'm going to say it again, have the best possible outcome. We can no longer say, well, you know what? That is happening to John's daughter. That is not my business. It is your business. Yes. Your children will go out and by some force of nature would encounter John's children. So if you treat every child that you encounter as though it is your child, then ultimately you will be protecting your own children. We have to stop the selfish attitude of their business, my business. It is our collective business. It is our responsibility as Trinbagonians to ensure that we raise a future generation of leaders who are caring, who are responsible, who are honest, and who are decent. And it starts by instilling the right values from childhood.
Understood, agreed. Last Friday, Honourable Minister, the Sexual Offences Amendment number 2 was recently passed in the lower house. The main purpose of the amendment was to ensure that it includes mechanisms to keep the sexual offenders registry updated. Can you elaborate on what that means for citizens?
So when I would have participated in that debate, and I would have used the analogy of the old time days where we had, the village people passing out information about persons. So I use the example, long time when somebody came into a village, the message would come through the chain about if that person is good or bad. Now, yes. What this would do, this would allow for those persons who are offenders to be tracked, for up-to-date information to be provided to the police service so they could identify the persons. They could know where they are, what they're doing, how they look, because sometimes people change the way they look. So all that information is going to be stored in a repository that will be able to be accessed by the relevant agency so that they can know where persons are, and that is critical. Long ago, we depended on the aunties and the uncles and the nenes in the village to warn persons. You see so and so come in the village, I hear he does molest boys and girls, mind your children. Now that responsibility would be with the police service, having that information and ensure that it's up to date so that they can lead in terms of safeguarding and protecting of vulnerable citizens. Yes, we still want the aunties and the uncles and the nenes to be mindful and observant and share information, but we now have a proper structure in place. And I want to commend the Office of the Attorney General, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, for helping to move us into a new era where we are improving safety and security for all our citizens, particularly those who are most vulnerable.
Totally agree. Honorable Minister, recently a task force was established to develop a work plan for implementation of recommendations to address child abuse at community residences. What can be expected from the task force and in what time frame?
Okay, Wendy. So the task force had their first meeting on May 4th, 2020. And their main job is to develop the work plan for implementation of the recommendations of the independent investigative report into the abuse of children at children's homes, rehabilitation centers, and other institutions which provide residential care for children. The chairman for the task force is the permanent secretary at Gender and Child Affairs, Mrs. Jacinta Bailey-Sobers. And the task force has been divided into 4 working teams. There's a team specifically focusing on legislation guiding the safeguarding, care, and protection of children and enforcing of licensing and monitoring requirements for children's homes. There's a team focused specifically on public financing for safeguarding, care, and protection of children and state coordination and collaboration. There's another team specifically focused on operations of the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. And the last team focuses on operating systems for community residences and child support centers and abuse and absconding. Ultimately, Wendy, at the end of it all, we hope to further improve and strengthen the child care protection system in Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of work would have been done between 2015 to now. There's still more work to do. If you wish, I could share some of the members of the task force.
Sure.
I've already mentioned Mrs. Jacinta Bailey-Sobers, who is the permanent secretary. From Gender and Child Affairs, serving on the task force, we have Mr. Bertram Moses, who is the coordinator of Child Affairs, and he is the co-chair of the task force. We have Mr. McCandle Caesar, coordinator, monitoring and evaluation, policy research and planning units. From the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, we have Ms. Sharon Morris Cummins, acting director. We have Ms. Elizabeth Lewis, acting deputy director, legal and regulatory services. We have Ms. Rhonda Gregoire Ruchan, deputy director, care services. From the investigation team, because we also included representatives from the investigation team in the task force, we have Ms. Aisha Corbie, who's the manager, victim and witness support unit, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And we have Mr. Lawrence Arjun, child and youth NGO representatives, and he's from the Heroes Foundation. From the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs, we have Ms. Ravita Baba, Senior Legal Officer in the International Office of Child Rights. From the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, we have Mr. Sean Ramerton, Director, Youth Affairs. From the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, we have Ms. Kathleen Saka, Assistant Director, National Family Services Division. And from the Tobago House of Assembly, we have Dr. Mona Dillon, Research Officer 1.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Based on the diverse competencies you would have just mentioned, I would think the task force is more than equipped to carry out their mandate.
I believe that they should be able to deliver within the 6-week time frame that was given to them, Wendy. I have confidence in the task force.
Thank you so much. And based on what I heard, I myself have confidence in the task force. Superintendent, you have confidence in the task force?
Yes. I'm happy to hear what I'm hearing.
Awesome. Honorable Minister, we have a question from our audience. And the question is, a young lady was missing from St. Jude's home. Is there security at these homes, and what are your views on that matter, which is still outgoing?
So yes, thanks for the question. Yes, we have security at St. Jude's home for girls. And I would have visited that institution on numerous occasions. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the problem is, even though you have security, that we need to ensure that there's proper supervision and constant monitoring of the young ladies at the residence. So some of the girls will find very creative ways to abscond. So I remember being called to the institution one time where they would have practically destroyed part of a wall to get out. Another time I was called to the institution where, for whatever reasons, the girls decided to riot, and they were able to physically remove an entire burglar proofing from a wall and break part of a wall. But at the end of the day, and as again, I want to remind all of us, we have to be very intentional in what we're doing. So if you're employed to supervise, ensure you supervise. Do it to the best of your ability. If you're employed to be the security officer, do your constant monitoring. But one of the things that we recognize, Wendy, is that maybe we need to consider having additional training, or maybe a specific cadre of persons specifically employed and trained to act as security officers at these facilities. Because when you hire a regular agency, security firm, and they don't understand the context within which they have to operate, they may not perform it to the best of their ability or in a manner we would want them to perform it. And strangely enough, that is one of the recommendations that would have been coming out of the report from the investigation team. And that is something the Children's Authority has been actively looking at implementing, how we could implement their own security system, security firm, to ensure proper supervision of the facilities. And it goes beyond the security officers. All our facilities have caregivers. Caregivers are supposed to not only provide care, but proper supervision. And it's just a call again to do your work with intention. Do it to the best of your ability, because at the end of the day, you're not only going to have to account for yourself, but you're going to account for what you have done to those persons who are going to take charge and lead Trinidad and Tobago in the future.
Totally agree. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We will be taking a break. We'll be right back.
We must go back to work. How are we going to pay the bills?
But what if something happens to us? Who will take care of our daughter?
When you talk about this viral infection, it runs the gamut between no symptoms to mild symptoms, vague kind of viral symptoms to obviously severe, requiring hospitalization, literally.
Childhood is a time of incredible brain development. Children are learning how they connect to the world around them. That means that stress in a child's family and community can make them feel anxious and alone. Parents may be seeing more tantrums, trouble sleeping and eating, and other worrisome changes in their children. Without support, stress could lead to long-term harm. But don't worry, there are things that you can do. Listen to your child's fears and concerns, and reassure them with explanations and hope. Schedule time every week to do a fun activity with your child. Connect your child to positive support persons, such as a trusted family member and friends. Returning to school may include some challenges. Develop a support plan and help your child prepare emotionally. And finally, take care of yourself and your mental health needs. Model the positive behavior you wish to see in your child.
Did you know that in the amended Domestic Violence Act, the definition of emotional or psychological abuse now includes making unwelcome or intimidatory contact with a victim by electronical or digital platform and disseminating intimate images of the applicant or applicant's child, as well as preventing a person from making or keeping connection with his or her family or friends. And thirdly, any other controlling or coercive behavior towards the person or his or her child will be considered emotional or psychological abuse. Every life counts. Do your part by contacting the police at 999 or the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-SAVE. That's 800-7283. This message brought to you by Gender and Child Affairs.
If you are now joining us, we are in the third and final segment of a 90-minute panel discussion titled The Village That Once Raised a Child, discussing a roadmap to protecting our nation's children, men and women. Subtitle, Your Final Destination. Earlier we had the head of the Child Protection Unit, Superintendent Guy-Alleyne, and the head of the Hunters and Rescue Team, Captain Valence Rambarat. In our second segment, we were joined by the Honorable Ayanna Webster Roy, Minister with the responsibility for Gender and Child Affairs, who are both still with us. And I'd like to welcome to the discussion Head of the Victims Witness and Support Unit, Mrs. Aisha Corbie. Thank you for agreeing to join us. How are you?
I am good, and a special good evening to the Honourable Minister online. Good evening, Minister, and to my colleague, Superintendent Guy-Alleyne, and your guest previously, Mr. Rambarat, who shared some very insightful information.
Yes.
Absolute pleasure, wonderful program.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Corbie, what is the role of the Victims Witness and Support Unit?
The Victim and Witness Support Unit, the aim of the unit is really to provide that therapeutic psychosocial support to any victim of crime. Male, female, child, adult, elderly, vulnerable, not vulnerable, elite. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service recognizes the value of engaging, serving and supporting the crime victim, not just for the well-being of the victim, but towards investigations. So what happens is that this unit now works alongside each investigative unit once a referral is made. So whilst the matter is being investigated, you are provided with this type of psychosocial package of services, be it counseling, be it updates on the investigation. What happens next? You go to work today and you come back home and you realize your house has been totally vandalized, or God forbid someone is killed. Where do I go from here? And this is where the Victim and Witness and Unit comes in to put the pieces together. What do you do next? What can you expect from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? Where you may have to go next? The experience at forensics, the experience at giving a statement, the experience at going to an identification parade. I may have to give evidence. How do I go to work? How do I cope? How do I know what is happening to me trauma-wise? And how do I balance with that? So it has that range of services are provided by the Victim and Witness Support Unit, all in all to provide that inroads into investigation while helping our citizens cope with crime. In addition to that, which would be the individual aspect, we also do significant work towards crime prevention and educating the populace on various crime types, particularly those that impact vulnerable citizens or children or disabled or elderly, and how we can keep ourselves safe. Right? So we do a number of programs and at different communities, all of course informed by the evidence. The unit is very much evidence-based, so it's informed by the data and the statistics, the reports that come in, and we design programs aligned, of course, to the strategic plan of the TTPS, focused on meeting those targets and really educating our public.
Awesome. Now you even educated me, because I knew some of the things that the unit does, but I was just educated as well. What do you think are the underlying causes for the recent, I don't know if it took off, the recent every single day we've had a gender-based violence incident last week. What do you think is the underlying cause?
You know, it's something that we've been experiencing, and I know when the pandemic came upon us, there was the language of the shadow pandemic.
Yes.
Right? And then the economy reopened and persons have been back out. But that shadow pandemic has left. And this is the thing, whilst we have gone back to what we may view as normal, the effects of what COVID-19 has been doing and continues to do will continue to be felt. And I would predict, as a psychologist, for some time again. We have, what we're facing now is some of the products of the crises.
Yes.
That would have been born from COVID-19, the loss of jobs, that lower income in the home. And what does that mean? The increased trauma in the family because of multiple deaths being experienced.
Yes.
Also the fallout in our education system of a number of children because they may not have had various devices or supplies to continue education.
Yes.
So a myriad of things is what the country experienced. And I just want to really commend the approaches, significant approaches by our government in terms of providing support, and also the activities of Minister Webster Roy's ministry in terms of providing those types of supportive elements through the various agencies. Notwithstanding that, we still have the fallout that we have to respond to, and she uses the term, Minister, that is that whole of government approach.
Yes.
And this is where it's really key as to how we respond to gender-based violence, or more so family violence, and how we keep ourselves safe, how we prevent violence. That whole, as to how we manage conflict, how we manage trauma, how we manage loss, all those things feed into what we see as domestic violence or gender-based violence.
Yes.
So they don't happen in isolation. And really looking at the impact of conflict in the home is where we need to look at. Really looking at the impact of those tragedies that persons experience. And as a society, we don't usually process trauma and loss in a very healthy manner historically.
Correct.
Right? It's not something where we encourage